Okay, welcome to the Stewardship Network's monthly webcast. My name is Rob Luzinski, and I'm the community coordinator at the Stewardship Network. We are so happy to have you here today for our June 2025 webcast. So I will now start with a little background on the Stewardship Network before we get into the presentation. So a little bit about us. TSN is a 501c3 nonprofit organization with an award-winning 20-year history. We are now serving 20 plus place-based TSN member communities across the Great Lakes with emerging presences across the country. And many of our programs, including this webcast, are available to everybody. So regardless of of whether or not you're a part of a member community or not, we have plenty of programs that are available to the general public. So our mission, we exist to connect, equip, and mobilize nature's caretakers. So I want to dig a little bit deeper into the different aspects of that mission. So first, we connect the specialized knowledge we've collected from a wide network of partners for TSN member communities, and we share it as widely as possible. This webcast is a great example of how we try to connect people with each other and also with the knowledge that we have had access to through the wonderful network of people we have, professionals in our network. Equip, so we remove hurdles for TSN member communities and like-purposed allies so they can pour thousands of annual work hours into their ecosystems. Examples of this are like our job board, our event calendar, and our Gloves for Good program. Those are all publicly accessible to anybody within our network. We also do a lot of equipping of our member communities with technical support and back-end support. So it's really important to us to focus on equipping so that nature's caretakers can do the next wonderful thing, which is mobilize. So through our TSN member communities and with the support of partners across the country, we seek to make collaborative stewardship accessible to everyone. And one of the best examples of mobilize is happening right now. So I would love to tell you a little bit more about one of our favorite programs, which I'm sure you've heard me talk about before, but this will be the last time that I mention it while the challenge is happening. So I would be remiss to not mention the Spring Challenge. So I would love to give you a little bit of background and also an update on how the Spring Challenge is going. A reminder that the Spring Challenge started on April 9th of this year and runs through June 30th. And the background is as such. So through the years, the challenge was built to increase the impact and awareness of collaborative stewardship activities, and we started in 2008. It was formerly the Garlic Mustard Challenge for those that have been around for a while. Then we changed to the Spring Invasive Species Challenge, and now we are in the Spring Challenge. The work is all happening, as we know, but Spring Challenge asks us to unite and do more together, whatever our role is. A reminder that it all counts. So whether you are a volunteer, which is a huge part of the submissions that we get every year, or a professional steward, which is also, a decent chunk of the submissions that we get, both are valid. So whether you are a volunteer or a professional steward, we recommend and ask that you submit all of the wonderful work you're doing this work season to the Spring Challenge. So I next like to give you a little update about where we're at right now. So we are at over 27,000 total hours of stewardship reported. That is incredible. We are even further along than we were last year, which is remarkable given that last year was such a successful year. We have nearly 9,000 total participants so far, which is also a remarkable number. And this is kind of last call to report. The deadline is June 30th. And a reminder that you can report any work that has happened since April 9th. So it doesn't have to be from now onward. It can be anything that has happened since April 9th. And I wanted to acknowledge that last year we saw a huge surge, as we normally do, at the end of the challenge. A lot of us are deadline driven. A lot of us are very busy. So totally understand that. But acknowledging that even from this point right now, we made it to 58,000 hours last year. And it is our goal to meet or exceed that number. So if you have been waiting to report, if you still have some hours that you've been meaning to get on the website, please do visit stewardshipnetwork.org/spring and report your hours anytime between and any work that has been done from April 9th until June 30th. Another really great thing, and we'd like to thank you for all of your support. And we know that 2025 has seen a major increase in demand for our support. And part of that is due to the uncertainty of funding with some of our partner organizations. So we're trying to do all that we can. And we are very, very grateful that generous donors have offered to match up to $25,000 by the end of this month. So if you are able to make a financial contribution to the Stewardship Network, we would really appreciate this. And we would love to take this opportunity to continue to do this work. It is more important than ever to be doing this work. So please visit stewardshipnetwork.org/donate if you are willing and able to make a contribution. And with that, I would like to introduce our presenter for this month. So we have Jarod Reibel, who is the Director of Physical Resources at the Edward Lowe Foundation. And the presentation today is from litter box to land conservation at Big Rock Valley. So with that, I would like to invite Jarod to join, and you can go ahead and share your screen.
All right. How does that look on your end, Rob?
That looks good. I can see it. Thank you.
Okay, let me switch over a couple gears. Okay, well, with that, I'll go ahead and get started. Thanks for the offer to speak for you guys today, Rob. It's always a pleasure. I know I've caught a lot of these from the other end, so being on this side of the screen is a pleasure, and always excited to talk about a few things that we're doing at the Edward Lowe Foundation. Um, So with that, a few of these that I've caught are very detailed and kind of project based. And today it'll really be more of a story of kind of a property and a foundation and kind of what we're doing from that. So we'll kind of talk a little bit, a brief history of Ed Lowe, kitty litter, the foundation, how it got started, highlight some things that we're doing today, whether those are major projects or collaborations, and really wrap up with kind of a little bit more of a detailed project that we've been involved in for a while. Um, so with that, I always like to say that the story starts with Ed Lowe. Without Ed Lowe, we don't have a story. We don't have the Edward Lowe Foundation or Big Rock Valley, which is the property that we own and manage. So really, the story goes all the way back to 1947 when Ed Lowe was returning from serving in the Navy and joined his father's company. That one of the things that they sold was an industrial absorbent. Um, and back in the day, people that had cats would use sawdust or ash, and when a cat would use it, it would kind of track paw prints all over the house and wasn't super hygienic or visually appealing. So the neighbor came over and asked if Ed could give her some sand to try, and instead he gave her this industrial absorbent, this clay filler, told her to try it out. So she took it. It worked very well. The cat seemed to like it. Kind of shopped it around with some of the neighbors, and they all had good reviews. So from there, he began to market it as kitty litter, really starting the whole industry and what we now know as kitty litter. Started selling it at local pet shops and taking it to cat shows. And then over the years, end up developing it into the business that we all know. To by the year 1990, the company had grown to over 600 employees, over $160 million in annual sales. So really grew it into the leader and started this whole industry. Um, this wasn't Ed's only business. We always like to say Ed was the entrepreneur's entrepreneur. He had many businesses throughout the years, some successful, some not. But while he was always passionate about his businesses, he also really had a great love of the land. He enjoyed being outside and he was really a big proponent of pondering or kind of purposeful thinking, whether that was business related or what he had going on in his life. Being outside really allowed him to reflect on those things. He enjoyed looking for mushrooms, a passion that most folks down here in Michigan really do enjoy. Um, he just liked being outside, whether that was with his dog or driving around cruising the roads. And back in 1964, he had an opportunity to buy 158 and a half acres. That was the first puzzle piece of many to follow. So from there, kind of the saying was Ed didn't want to own all the land, just all the land next to his. So he had that first piece, and then over the years, he would try and kind of connect pieces around that as a farm would come up for sale next door. He would try and purchase that, or if there was a couple farms in between, he would try and um, try and gain that with the idea that eventually they'd be able to connect those pieces. And he was pretty successful in doing that. And now we currently sit at about 2,000 acres that we manage. So really, the story of the foundation now kind of jumps to 1985 when Edward Lowe and his wife Darlene decided to start the Edward Lowe Foundation and gave a portion of their estate to the foundation. That is the property that we now sit on and use as our kind of retreat center and manage for conservation and all things wildlife. And we're kind of a unique mix of business and conservation that I don't think many people really are able to see unless they've come out here. We're kind of one of one, I would say, to where most weeks of the year we have business owners or business leaders coming from second stage businesses, which is a very specific niche in businesses that's kind of 10 to 99 employees and between 1 and 50 million in annual revenue. So they're kind of more established, but they're still growing. And really, the purpose of the foundation is to give back to the entrepreneurs, the help that Ed wished he had when he was developing his businesses, and kind of hit some roadblocks and wished he had some help. And what's really special about us is we have this 2,000 acres, and when Ed was buying up these small farms, most of them would have an old farmhouse or a barn that then over time have been converted into kind of guest level housing where entrepreneurs come out and we have programs that they run through that kind of help their business and they stay on the foundation for 2 nights, 3 days, and they're able to kind of take a step back from their businesses, take a step out into nature, and really work on their businesses that way by taking a step back to really dive in and connect with themselves. So it's a very special place, and there's kind of a magic about getting outside and seeing the nature that really allows them to focus and really figure out the problems that they need to solve. And going back, as I said, Ed would buy up a lot of these smaller farms and piece them together. Cass County is a very ag central area where we're at here down in Southwest Michigan. And early days, yeah, we had a lot of farmland. We had cattle programs. We had horse programs. So it looks very different than what it is today. Um, and to kind of highlight that today, inside this yellow line is the Edward Lowe Foundation's Big Rock Valley, as we call it. Um, but if you look outside of that, we're kind of this island of habitat in the sea of agriculture. So most of the summer, yeah, it's a sea of corn and soybeans. And then once crops come down in the fall, you have a lot of vacant farmland that's just waiting for the next growing season. So there's really not much wildlife habitat around us. We do have a state game area, probably 8 or 10 miles to the east, towards Three Rivers, and then there's some habitat that we kind of connect into along the Dowagiac River. But we're gonna kind of keep jumping back and forth in time, and I want to go all the way back to circa 1800 Michigan Natural Features Inventories um, map of kind of the habitat types back then. And rather than get lost in all the colors, essentially the center of this photo is where we now sit today. And that kind of overlaps in what would have been these beech maple forests, mixed oak savannas, prairies and grasslands, as well as hardwood swamps. So really, as folks behind me, there's a lot of familiar faces in the participant list here. One was Mike McQuestion, who was with Ed Lowe from the early days and really had a big impact on what this foundation is now from a conservation standpoint. So really looking at this map of what would have been here in the early days of the foundation of what do we want this place to look like in the future is really thinking about, yeah, what would have been here historically and tried to kind of convert some of those areas back to where we're at today. So jumping back to present day, this is kind of a little bit of a zoom in on that photo I showed earlier, to where, yeah, inside the yellow is property that we own and manage for conservation. And what's special about it is 2,000 acres to some is a lot of property. To others, it's not that much. But across the 2,000 acres, we have a lot of diversity. We've got a lot of wetlands, woodlands, restored prairies. We still do have some agricultural land. Um, Still have some savanna restoration sites that we're working on. But cramming all those kind of different habitat types in that 2,000 acres we're able to fill a lot of different niches for a lot of different species. So really that diversity is going to attract diversity in our wildlife species, which is pretty special that not a lot of places have. So thinking back to kind of what would have been here, we're kind of trying to convert back to what those remnants would have been. And we would have been in that portion of the grasslands. And so we've put a lot of effort into restoring prairies. A lot of these um, lower quality agricultural acreage across the property have been planted into native prairies. And really our process with that has evolved over the years as well. To where early on, yeah, it was very heavy on the big four warm season grasses, and then over time, that progressed to including more diversity in our forb mixes, and then we've even gone so far to going and focusing on local genotypes. We found a company we've worked with, Native Connections, that have been really good to us for working with that local genotype, diverse mixes that work well for our area. Um, and once we kind of established these areas that were kind of that low-hanging fruit of they once were a farm field and now they're prairie. Now we've really started focusing on and how do we improve that? What's the next step? And for us, that was really connectivity. It's great to have habitat, but you also want things to be able to move between these areas of habitat. So a lot of our fields or woodlots now have strips of prairie that connect bigger portions to one another to really try and increase the overall acreage and benefit of our prairies in these areas. Another cool thing that having so many high quality prairies have allowed us to do is also help others. We've served as kind of a seed collection site for Project Wingspan, which then is trying to take pollinator habitat and expand it even more. So it's a great program, and it's always I always say kind of early July is peak to come out and really look at all the butterflies and birds and wildlife that are really incorporating, swarming these prairies that we've established over time. Um, Moving forward, I'm going to give a couple aerial shots just to kind of paint a picture of some of that diversity that we do have. So this picture I always love. Obviously, fall colors in Michigan are great, but it highlights kind of the diversity that we have in close proximity. So we have these wetland complexes that have heavier emergent wetland habitats. We have these calcareous fens that provide habitat for all sorts of different wetland species. We've got woodland acreage that we work with consulting foresters to really manage for both diversity and overall forest health. And then what's also cool is we've taken a subset of our wooded acreage and set it aside for managed old growth. And what I mean by managed old growth is it may not be considered old growth right now, but we're managing it in a way and going to protect it to eventually one day meet those standards of old growth that most of Michigan and really most of the United States isn't going to see because of kind of the return intervals on most timber harvest programs. But this good photo, it kind of represents we've got that prairie tying into woodlands, tying into wetlands. We have all these different habitat niches that could provide habitat for something, all in pretty close proximity. Um, Extending into kind of more of our buildings here. This building shown is our headquarters building. So we've got a large parking lot, but we've incorporated ponds that can collect some of that surface runoff. It gets filtered through prairies, provides wildlife habitat for a lot of different things. Most of our buildings are, yeah, dropped in nature, so our guests are staying here kind of always surrounded by something beautiful, something wild, something providing habitat. So we've got these nice prairies that wrap a lot of our buildings. Um, and in that last photo, obviously there was some of our agricultural field shown, and we're always trying to move the needle whenever we can. So even in our cropland, we do lease it. Our local farmers are practicing organic or no-till, so relatively conservation friendly practices. But within some of our fields, like I said before, a lot of them have prairie strips running along the sides that really serve as corridor strips. But in some of our larger fields, we've actually gone ahead and tried this unique practice of what we're calling our conservation prairie strips. And they've been done. They're not novel. They were really taking hold out in Iowa. But really the purpose of those are more surface water runoff, erosion control, in areas of kind of topography, whereas the practice that we're trying to do here is really do the system in reverse. So what I mean by that is a lot of our prairies that we've lost historically, if you think kind of through the Corn Belt and these areas that are heavy ag that once were prairies, were dissed under and tilled under, and they have really good soil profiles. A lot of these prairie species have roots that reach down 15, 18, 20 feet deep, and have these really rich layers, but over time they get depleted by the system of kind of continually planting to now where we're having to rely on fertilizers to get the crop production that we're really looking for. So what the goal for these strips are is basically plant prairies back into agricultural systems, let it build back up for 10, 15 years, however long it needs to really build that soil, store carbon, put nutrients back in the soil. And then the end goal is to actually move these strips and rotate them through the field to basically build the soil back up, naturally provide habitat while doing so, whether that's for small mammals, birds, pollinators, beneficial pest control, all sorts of benefits that are also being found while we're trying to build that soil back up with these prairies. Right now, we're working with a group of researchers to really study how to move that and kind of the benefits of doing that. But in the meantime, it's certainly providing benefit for our local wildlife while we figure that out. Um, but with that, that's a good kind of transition. So we've kind of established what the property is like, kind of some of the restoration efforts that we've done. But I also want to kind of highlight how we use the property. And I always like to kind of term it as a living laboratory or at this 2,000 acre petri dish to where we're working with biological and ecological researchers to answer questions that are valid, not only on our property, but across most of the Midwest. So we've had a long history of collaborative projects, mostly with kind of master's or PhD level projects, and I've worked with most universities really across the region. If you can name a university in Michigan, Indiana, Ohio, we've probably had some sort of collaboration. They've had some folks out to the site at one point or another. And with those being that master's, PhD level projects, generally they're 2, 3, 4 year cycles and then kind of turning over. So at any given time, we probably have 4 to 5 different projects taking place. Across it, they've ranged from everything from bees to snakes to soils to fire projects that we have going on right now, and really everything in between that. So it serves as a great living laboratory to where, yeah, they can study these things. It helps us better manage the property, but also takes that benefit and shares it out to the rest of the scientific community. Um, 2,000 acres is a large piece of property, and in kind of being given and deemed the stewards of that property, it is our responsibility to maintain and care for that property. And in doing that, one of our main approaches that we've been using for the last 25 years or so is prescribed fire. It's a natural disturbance that was part of the landscape long before we became stewards of it. Indigenous people are using it long ago for numerous reasons. And a lot of our prairie and savanna species and even our wetland species adapted to fire over time. And we live in a time where most of the PR that fire gets is the bad fires, the catastrophic fires that are definitely not good, but fire lacks kind of this good PR of the good fire that has good ecological outcomes and it's part of it. It's amazing to see firework to where it'll be a black landscape and a week later, you already see this lush life returning back to it. And a lot of the species that aren't supposed to be there are non-natives, are invasives. Our woody succession gets set back, and really it's that rejuvenate button for a lot of our prairie species, and they come on really strong that following summer. Um, with that, another thing to mention is fire generally in the prescribed side of things historically has always kind of been a spring burn season. Everything's coming out of winter. It's dormant. It's dry. You get low humidity days. It's pretty easy to burn things. But it's also important to think that fire isn't always the fire that historically these areas were seeing didn't always happen on March 17th or April 13th. Fire could have happened at any given point of the year, and really when fire is hitting a landscape is really what species are in what phenological stages are really what's going to impact how they respond to that fire. So a big push of recent is to kind of change up seasonality of fire and not just always burn in spring. So we've been burning in spring, summer, fall to really not play favorites on any one species and kind of there's a saying that pyrodiversity begets biodiversity. So when you're kind of changing the seasons that you're burning certain areas, you're going to kind of see different impacts and different benefits. So it's been a process that we've really been getting into as of recently. But most of our wetlands, prairies, and some of our more fire dependent woodlands are really managed primarily through fire. We do some chemical treatment too, but the fire is kind of this natural disturbance tool that um, is is a great management tool if done properly and safely. Um, but we've also done certain projects over the years that we're always trying to improve the property that we have for the wildlife species we have. So some of the ones that are shown here, the top left photo here is a man-made hibernaculum where we've dug out this big pit, backfilled it with large stumps and logs and rocks, and then backfilled it to kind of create all these cavities for snakes and small mammals to burrow down into. We all know the importance of vernal ponds and how much life is really revolved and reproduction revolves around them in the springtime. So we've um, tried to either improve or replicate some vernal ponds and put ponds across the property to give access to some of those. The middle picture is a osprey platform that we put up a couple of years ago. Cass County was identified as a possible opportunity for increasing osprey nesting. And they are pretty much reliant on man-made nesting structures at this point. So we built and erected this osprey tower back in kind of one of our remote sections back by some of our waterways. And while we haven't had a nesting pair take up residency, I would say I've started to see more osprey the last couple of years. So I'm optimistic that we're going to have a resident here pretty soon. But we're always trying things. Some of them work, some of them don't. An example of that is this picture on the right side, which is currently a electric fence to protect some turtle nesting sites. Um, before we came here, we always had this area along our lake that turtles would always nest in every spring. But then raccoons would come through and dig those nests back up, and we wouldn't see the turtles, the eggs actually make it. So we built this huge structure that was a great idea. It was basically a wooden fenced-in enclosure that extended out into the lake. Turtles could swim up under, had this whole protected shoreline to lay their eggs in. And the plan sounds great. The problem is the turtles didn't necessarily get the memo. And what we found is they were actually laying their shells right on the outside of it, which didn't solve our raccoon problem. So we ended up scrapping that idea, yanking it out, found some literature of some folks, I believe it was Geller, that was trying electric fences to protect turtles with the idea that turtles can go up and under. This clothesline is the bottom couple of wires here. Um, Still have access to the site, lay their eggs, crawl back out, and be relatively unfazed. Meanwhile, the top lines are hot wires or electric wires, with the idea that a raccoon, in the process of trying to get to those eggs that were just laid, is gonna kind of go up and over and grab that wire and get a quick shock and have that negative interaction with that area and hopefully protect that site. We're still kind of tweaking that. I would say I seem to think that that's protecting some shells. You just kind of we have to keep an eye on it. We've had a couple breaches where some of the wires get pushed down. So we're always trying new things, and it's always kind of adapt and tweak things that may not work, or try things and hope they work, and maybe pleasantly surprised, or may go back to the drawing board when they don't work like we planned. Moving on from there, I do want to kind of highlight a few kind of collaborative efforts that we've done over the years, and really, I would say collaboration is always going to help us do more than we can do independently. So the last several years, we've collaborated with Grand Valley State University, and within their natural resource management program, they have several fire courses to basically have their students coming out with several certifications that are good, or at least a better understanding of fire in the use of natural resource management and kind of conservation. So it's not just us in Grand Valley. It would not be possible without collaborators from Lake State's Fire Science Consortium, the DNR. We had folks from um, Fish and Wildlife Service, Forest Service, private contractors, all these fire professionals coming out to really ensure that this experience is good, and we're really training up this next generation of professionals to have a well-balanced concept of fire and how to safely do it. So twice a year we have them out for a week, and they're getting their national wildland certification group certifications for S130, S190, which are really kind of the baseline certifications for anything prescribed fire, as well as any wildfire assignments out west or even in Michigan. And we also offer every couple of years S290, which is kind of the next level up for those folks. So it's always really exciting. You can tell when students get the bug. The picture in the top right, that particular student, that was kind of when that bulb clicked for her. And I think the next summer she ended up on a wildfire assignment out west in Idaho all summer. So not all these students end up probably ever working on a fire, but all of them have come out of the week with a better understanding of how fire plays a role. And several of them do end up getting jobs in the fire, wildland fire kind of realm. Um, so that's one kind of program that we've been doing the last couple of years, but occasionally we will partner with groups that kind of have these field days as our calendar allows. So one in particular that kind of stands out from a couple of years ago was a partnership with the MyStrips program, which is under the Kellogg Biological Center with MSU, to where we hosted this field day. We had several different farmers, researchers, soil scientists come out. It was open to the public, and farmers could come. And really, the point of the MyStrips program and what they're trying to advocate is really how to incorporate these prairie strips that we're already doing into agricultural lands across Michigan for all the different benefits. So had speakers kind of speaking about their viewpoints on it, their experiences with it. And we actually dug a great big soil pit underneath that kind of transected half of our prairie strips and half of a agricultural land. So then our soil scientists could actually like visually talk about the differences between these two systems. You can look at the different soil or the different root profiles. So there's just kind of these one-off days that occasionally we're able to do to really bring people in and kind of highlight what we're doing and try and move that needle elsewhere off the property. Um, Another kind of pilot program I would say we did was a couple years back with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And that was setting up these drip fences that are tied into buckets with cameras in them. And this was really started down in Ohio, I believe, as presence absence kind of detection surveys for a lot of different species, with the idea that they're kind of funneled through these buckets and these cameras take a snapshot of them. So if you don't know if something's there, you can kind of put them out and let them sit and come back and check the cameras. Um, and we kind of served as this pilot program for Michigan to where the Fish and Wildlife Service was interested in kind of expanding this program in Michigan. But the habitat that Massasaugas that they were looking at in Michigan versus Ohio tends to be quite a bit different. So they wanted to make sure that it was still going to work in the Michigan kind of more emergent wetland habitats before they kind of dove fully in and invested in a large number of these setups. So they reached out and we set it up and were shown successful. And what's interesting is just the two sample photos I have on the right here is you can tell that those are different individuals based on saddle patterns. So we got Massasaugas using them. We had all sorts of herps and amphibians crossing. Also, we had birds detected. We had small mammals. So it really was a relatively easy way to, one, see if it's going to work. We have a pretty good handle on what's in our wetlands. And now that it was shown successfully, these things are relatively common across Michigan. I know several other organizations that are using them to kind of survey different areas that they're not particularly sure what's out there in doing so. And with that, I'm going to kind of wrap up my presentation with a little bit more of an in-depth overview of kind of our best known program and really what puts us on the map. And that is our Eastern Massasauga Rattlesnake program. So with that, for those of you that aren't familiar with Eastern Massasaugas, they are federally threatened, so they're a protected species. And they're a pretty cryptic species. They're kind of termed the swamp rattler. So they're generally restricted to wetlands in our areas. And every year we survey for them, and I always like to say it's really like looking for a needle in a haystack. Only that needle is cryptic and also venomous. So if you kind of picture this emergent wetland on the left, a lot of these are it's a mixture of sedges, cattails. All those cattails are 5, 6 feet tall, and you're walking through looking for a 1.5 foot, 2 foot snake that generally relies on not being seen. So the photo on the right in the center there is actually a Massasauga curled up. So we spend a week and we're really looking for these snakes that are preferred not to be found. They're pretty good at hiding, I would say. Usually when you find one, it's a good feeling. So. The program in particular is another collaborative effort, and that's with the Eastern Massasauga Saving Animals from Extinction program. So while that's kind of a mouthful, EMR Safe, formerly EMR SSP, is a group of AZA zoos that have captive EMRs that work for their breeding population and also advocating and working towards conservation in the wild and research that's aiding towards that conservation in the wild. So this program dates all the way back to 2009. So once again, most of these things that I'm talking about, I can't take credit for. We were doing it long before I was with the foundation, but we're carrying these things in, are carrying these programs into the future. So this program started back all the way in 2009. So every spring we've had this group out to survey for Massasaugas. And we've done that every spring except one year, and that was 2020 because COVID pretty much had the whole world shut down. So outside of that, we've had individuals that have made it every single year and have no plans of slowing down. So I will say before we get in anything farther, all of these pictures and handling that we'll kind of talk about are done under state and federal permitting, and you should not be handling Massasaugas without proper permitting and training. So with that, kind of the concept of that is we're surveying our property, looking for Massasaugas, and when we do find them, we collect them. We are also collecting kind of environmental data of the habitat that the snake's using, kind of how we found it, what it was doing, and then we take it back to our on-site lab where we have trained professionals, zoo vets that are capable and trained to handle these venomous snakes, collect all sorts of biological data from the individuals. And what really makes it special is before we wrap up and we send the snake back out in the field, they get inserted a pit tag. So that's just like your cat or dog gets a microchip. So if it runs off, it can be identified and tracked back to you. What these snakes or what these pit tags don't do is they don't tell us where the snake is. It's still up to us to find the snakes. But what it does is if we find that snake in subsequent years, it gives it a unique ID number that we can then track back to certain snakes. So we can kind of track that snake throughout the years and throughout its life as long as we continue to find it, which doesn't always happen. And it kind of builds this really big data set and kind of lets us kind of track how these snakes are progressing. What's really cool about the longevity of the study is we have this huge data set that is generally really hard to get. Snakes are hard to find to begin with, let alone large populations to where you can get numbers. To where snake, we're over 1,000 individuals that we've collected data from as part of this program. And really, this program really serves as a model for a lot of different kind of spin-off survey projects all the way across the regions, kind of a Great Lakes basin. Snake ranging from kind of Canada, New York, Indiana, Ohio, over to Wisconsin, through Michigan. And most populations, they're not doing very good. So the research that we're collecting here is really able to influence the management and kind of hopefully recovery of the species all the way across its range. Um, and so one specific one that I like to highlight is ELF 271. So if you remember me saying we're new numbers are over 1,000 now. So this was a fairly early capture, and her kind of history, I like to call her our golden girl. She's kind of our 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 celebrity. So her story goes all the way back to 2011 when she was first located as a 1-year-old snake. So kind of a little noodle, a pencil-sized snake. She weighed 60 grams. And what's really cool is we've kind of done these annual checkups as we found her over the years in 2014, 15, 16, 17, 19, 22, 23. And this past spring, we were able to locate her again. So not every year she makes an appearance. She's still pretty good at hiding. But occasionally we do find individuals that we have these long histories with. And what's really cool is now we know she is 15 years old, and this year she was over 350 grams. And what's even cooler is she was gravid or pregnant. And at 15 years old, I'm not going to make a claim that she's the oldest known wild, but if she's not the oldest, she's definitely one of the oldest known wild Massasaugas anywhere, even in captivity where they have vet checkups, food, don't have to avoid predators. A 15-year-old Massasauga is an extremely old Massasauga. So the signs that she's 15, still reproductively healthy and contributing to the population is a great sign for kind of our population as a whole, but also it's since we've been able to track these populations as long as we have, we're really starting to answer some questions that you can't really do in a 2 or 3 year master's project. So the longevity is really boosting what we can answer, the questions we can answer, and really influence kind of management across its range, which is exciting. And the last thing I'll kind of highlight on this program is really how it's used and leverage, once again, this collaborative conservation. So right across the road from us is about a 450-acre wetland complex that the owner was looking to sell, and we were able to kind of make some mutual acquaintances and Southwest Michigan Land Conservancy Swimlick was able to hop on a grant with another land conservancy out of Ohio, apply for a Fish and Wildlife Service Section 6 grant aimed at endangered species habitat acquisition, and it was a national grant. Really, a lot of the work that we're doing with our Massasaugas, they know it's a population that we want to conserve long term, and collectively, they were able to be selected for this grant and receive about 89% funding to purchase this property. So now collectively, working together to kind of manage this really big wetland complex. We're protecting over 1,000 acres of this critical wetland habitat that provides a safe space for a lot of our different species that need the help and protection. And I think this is really a good highlight of yeah, that collaboration. Collectively, we can have a bigger impact than either organization can do on our own. So looking forward to see that property take shape and improve over the years. But it's always exciting. And the last thing I'll kind of highlight is some of our guests that use the property for our entrepreneurship retreats. They spend time out on the property. Like I said, it's really removing them from their business, emerging them in nature to really kind of focus, have this clear head to really work on their businesses. But what's really exciting is when we have entrepreneurs that spend time out on the property, then we get photos of Rob and a snapping turtle, and he's so excited about these turtles, or whether it's a snapping turtle or these birds. People just get excited about nature when they get out in nature and see things. And really the how I'd summarize or kind of wrap this thing up is at the end of the day, yeah, we're managing 2,000 acres, which is a large swath, and I feel like we are making a large impact and difference. But you don't have to have 2,000 acres to make an impact or a difference. It could be as simple as putting in a pollinator garden in your front yard in the city, or really anything that you can do can make a difference. In order for us to really do the most for the greater good, it's going to be this collaborative effort from all of us involved. Um, so with that, that's kind of the end of my story. My contact information is right here. Feel free to email me afterwards. Look us up on our website there down at the bottom. We have a lot of kind of both entrepreneurship information of things we're doing as well as our land stewardship projects and different things that we're trying to highlight. So with that, I'd be happy. I think we probably have a few minutes for questions, and I'd be happy to answer any of those.
Thank you so very much, Jared. That is such a wonderful story. So interesting. I mean, the kitty litter thing always is so funny and interesting to me, of course, and then all the amazing things that have come from that story. So thank you very much. And a reminder to folks in the audience that you can use the Q&A function to submit your questions if you would like. So I have a few that I would like to start off with. So one question is, how do you set your priorities for conservation on the property? There's so many options, and what does your staff capacity look like for this work, and just what is the process for you evaluating, your conservation priorities for the property?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I kind of alluded to it. So when I came in 2020, I was kind of jumping on board a ship that was managed very well beforehand, and really the way I look at it is, yeah, don't mess it up now. A lot of the groundwork was laid before, and really looking at, yeah, historically what would have been here. But that's a very complicated question that we deal with all the time, and I kind of think of things as kind of a teeter-totter to where yeah, we have these rare species that need our help, and we could certainly manage specifically for that. But we always kind of have to weigh the alternative of if you push this button over here, what other lights are going to come on. So it's really a balancing act, and we try and provide a place for kind of as many things as we can. Even in our prairies, we have different rotation cycles to where some of our prairies may be on a 3-year rotation, some might be on a little bit longer. So we have different areas with different thatch layers that may attract a different bird that has certain preferences. Um, when it comes to invasives, we deal with that just like everybody else, and it's kind of um, the way I view it is, yeah, kind of draw your circles around your pristine, high quality areas and defend as much as you can. Um, Also in the same boat where I think everyone wishes they had more capacity, more staff in order to do that work. So we are a relatively small organization. We get help from all over the place. I always use the example when talking about kind of our conservation crew is um, everybody helps out in kind of different capacities. And for our retreats, we have an in-house guest services team that cooks and prepares food and everything like that. And one of them is a culinary trained chef. And we always say our chef's great with a torch, whether it's in the kitchen doing creme brulee for our guests or if it's out on the fire line lighting off prescribed fires. So um, it's a complex question, and we're always trying to do as much as we can with who we have, the resources we have, and really kind of playing that balancing act of not particularly playing favorites to certain species, obviously giving the species that need the attention, but still kind of having that big picture in the back of our mind of how everything else is going to be impacted.
Yeah, thank you for that. I led off with a complicated question. I understand, and I know it's an ever evolving kind of set of priorities, but that was great. Thank you. So another question that I had was, if you could give examples or kind of your approach to species introduction. I'm curious about, what was already there historically, and if you did have any opportunities. I'm sure there were some, either plant or animal life, doing introductions, or was it mainly just what was ever naturally visiting you and stuff like that?
Yeah, so it's kind of more the phrase kind of build it and they'll come. So to my knowledge, really the only thing that we're introducing is when we do our prairie species, we have a lot of our seed mixes are very diverse, and those are all native species that we're trying to bring back. So we're not really translocating wildlife or different species that we don't have. It's kind of build the habitat where if we're talking birds, they'll show up if they have what they need and things like that. Um, Long before my time, we've actually gone the other direction to where wild turkeys, when their numbers were pretty low across most of Canada and the United States, we actually worked with the DNR to transplant turkeys off of our property. We had a very healthy, sizable um, population that we were able to aid in kind of the relocation, reestablishment efforts elsewhere. But yeah, to my knowledge, we don't really bring anything in. It's kind of build them the right home and see what shows up.
That's great. Thank you. So we have a question that just came in from Emma. And that is, have you run into any other issues with the electrified fence and the turtles? How do you ensure the turtles aren't being affected by the electrification?
Yeah, so there's a couple different scientific literature out there. I believe the researcher, primary author is Geller. But if you look it up, there's a couple different ones, and he has different kind of recommendations as he's done it. My experience, like I said, it's kind of a tweak where we play around with it a couple times to where um, in that paper he has kind of specifications of recommendations of kind of heights of those lower wires that are not hot wires where you can just touch it and go back and forth in it based on kind of the sizes of different turtle species and kind of their heights, with the idea that they're close enough, like I said, turtles are fine to go under, but a raccoon, it views it as it's easier to go up and over. So there's recommendations on kind of size and space, and it's also kind of knowing the species that you do have around, because yeah, if you have taller species, you may want to kind of adapt to that. But
Yeah, that's interesting. Thank you. Um, Another question. Oh, sorry, and there may be, let me check this. Um, okay, there's a question here. Have you worked with the DNR to create grouse or pheasant habitat on your property?
not particularly. So we have a lot, like pheasants are a grassland species, and so we've got plenty of grassland to them. We've had some neighbors historically that would plant pheasants on their properties, and I think over time, if you really look at the landscape on a larger scale, when there were smaller farms, kind of that 40 to a couple hundred acres, a lot of times there would be a wooded fence row that kind of served as some habitat between those, and also the equipment for harvesting was less efficient back in the day too, where there'd be more waste for them. To where now a lot of the farms in the area are kind of getting larger and larger, and a lot of those fence rows are being ripped out. So a lot of the surrounding habitat is not really there to support them. So it's I think kind of a critical mass thing to where we have a ton of it. We also have a healthy coyote population, which is part of the landscape too, to where they certainly have predators, and a lot of the ones being introduced are non really wild ones to begin with. So we haven't directly worked with the DNR to kind of do that habitat. We put in several hundred acres of grasslands that if there was enough and they could kind of subside. Occasionally we will see one. I think last summer there was one. I saw a couple mornings, a big male on the fence coming in, but I haven't seen him since. So whether that's he's hiding or he's moved on or who knows.
That's great. Thank you so much. Well, with that, I could ask you 100 more questions, I'm sure, about the amazing work you do, but I think that'll take us into our outro for the Stewardship Network. So allow me to just take over sharing screen for a minute. And thank you all so much, all of our attendees, for joining us and also for all of your questions. Okay, so we would like to encourage you to become a regular. Every second Wednesday of the month in the Eastern Time Zone's noon hour, we will be doing these monthly webcasts, and you can learn more about our upcoming webcasts and also watch some of our archives at stewardshipnetwork.org/webcast. And so some of the ones that we have coming up here. So in July of 2025, we have Change on the North Coast, Indigenous Partnership and Public Lands, with Victor and Shalana with California State Parks. And then next we have Ecology of Red-Headed Woodpeckers in a Threatened Ecosystem, Insights from a Long-Term Investigation in Oak Savannas with Elena from University of Minnesota, Twin Cities. Last but certainly not least, I would love to remind you once more, whether this is your first report or it's your 20th, the deadline for the TSN Spring Challenge is June 30th. And a reminder that you can submit any work that has been done since April 9th. So even stuff that's been done in the last month and a half or, time, we encourage you to submit all of that. And tune in next month for a celebration of our final program results and honors. We're hoping to hit that 58,000 number or beyond it. So please do help us do that. And you can again visit stewardshipnetwork.org/spring to learn more about the program and to submit. So with that, thank you all so much, and I hope you have a great rest of the day.